Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Tennessee Fats and I'm coming to the library today because we are going back to the basics. Today I am talking Conan. That's right, no other Robert E. Howard content, just Conan. And it's an exciting one because today we're doing an obscure Conan miniseries review. Now, many of you have been with us in these videos before, and I gotta say, we've had some that were absolute stinkers. Yeah, I'd say that statement's probably fairly fair. And we've had some of those ones where you're like, okay, yeah, that wasn't bad. This one's got me a little excited though. Let me show you why. This is what we're reading today. Today it's Conan the Barbarian, Lord of the Spiders. Now, this is the 1998 miniseries, and I'll tell you why this one I have particularly high hopes for. This one's written by Roy Thomas. There you go. Let that sink in for a second. Roy Thomas is the writer of this 1998 miniseries. So we're talking the Marvel doldrum years here, and Roy Thomas stepping back to the helm to say, no, I'll just pen this one myself. That sounds pretty good. Now, without any more looking at me, let's get into the books. All right. So let's get down to brass taxes here, shall we? What is this miniseries about? Let's first talk about that before we even get into showing you guys the books and what I found when I was going through them, okay? What is this? Well, I'll tell you. A while back, and unfortunately, I don't have the privilege of actually seeing or holding this or reading this, but an author named L. Sprague de Camp. Now, I know you guys who are Conanophiles are going to say to me, Tennessee Fats, we already know who that is. I have never found any of his books. I hate to say it, but I haven't. I have been looking everywhere for the damn things locally. Even when I'm heading down throughout the United States, every bookstore I go into, it's like, oh, do we have any L. Sprague de Camp? No, I don't know. Someday I'm going to have to find the damn things, but I just can't seem to find his work. Anyway, he wrote a book a long while back, called Conan and the Spider God. Now, in that, it's a fairly inclusive story. By all accounts, it sounds like it's pretty good. Apparently, Roy Thomas himself actually liked it. That's a pretty strong statement for me. And I'm like, okay, well, if you like it, I'm going to assume I'm going to probably like it. Anyways, in that, Conan has a whole adventure. And in that adventure, I don't want to spoil that too much because I can just go by what I've read online about the story and what this particular miniseries covers. So let's just go back to the basics here. There's a bad guy named Harpagus, okay? And at the end of the story, he's an amnesiac, okay? But Conan has taken away everything that he basically built up and wanted, okay? And he is a priest of a spider god, okay? In that story as well, Conan has a love interest that unfortunately dies. That's all I'm going to say about that story really because I haven't read it. I can't give you the full detail on it. I can only go with the synopsis that I can read online here. But those are the salient points that you need to know to get into this story. Because effectively what happened here was Roy Thomas really liked that story. And when he liked that story that much, you say to yourself, well, I've done comic adaptation of all the Robert E. Howard stuff. I should probably do this too. And he did. And I'll show you what he did it in. He did it in these. Savage Sword of Conan number 207 through 210. Now, I'll tell you, the funny part about this is when I go through my Savage Sword collection, I actually have 207, and I actually have 210. But guess what I don't have? The middle of the damn story. So, frustration there. I'm going to have to go find those, and then I'll be able to read that story in detail. But right now I can't. But in that, he did his adaptation of Conan and the Spider God. Or is it the God of Spiders? I think it's the Spider God. One point. After that, really, Roy Thomas decided, I really like these characters. And I want to build more on them because Harpagus at the end of the story is an amnesiac, but that doesn't mean he's dead. He's not gone. So how do I build more onto this? Well, that particular comic adaptation was in 1993. Well, by the time 1998 rolled around, Marvel's going to be losing the license soon. They're spitting out miniseries like crazy. I think this is actually the third to last miniseries they did. I think so. I believe the last Conan Marvel miniseries they did before it flipped over to Dark Horse was Conan the Flame and the Fiend, which I think is only 2 after this, I believe. But in that, 1998, he decided, I'm going to build more onto this. I'm going to do the continuation of the story. And that's what these are, which again, a lot of spider motif on this one. And it does kind of explain that when you actually read into the intro on it, but we'll get into that a little bit later. And really, you've got Roy Thomas, not Robert E. Howard, Roy Thomas, writing a story here which continues the characters to give, I guess, a sense of finalization for him. So that's what the miniseries is. Art's a little, how do I say this? Well, okay. It's 1998, right? 1998, these are the doldrum years for the comic industry as a whole. Now, bear in mind, okay, you got 93, 92-ish, 5 years earlier, you had the whole explosion of the Malibu, the Valiant, the Image. Those were popping up. And in those, the art styles were getting stretched a little bit. Marvel at that point in time was competing, trying to be more Image-esque. I'm going to use that phrase, more Valiant-esque. I think one of the key artists that kind of steers that whole direction is probably Bart Sears, actually, if you're really wanting to look something up here and say, well, who the hell's that guy? Yeah, check that out. They're trying to be more Bart Sears-esque. And there are certain aspects of the art in this that really do tell the tale of the late 1990s in comics. And we'll get more into that when we get to the conclusion point, but do keep an eye out for that as we start going through the books, all right? So there's your intro, and that's the story, and let's get into the actual books now. And we're back. Now, at this point in our videos, and we do this every single time. Wait. We forgot something. Wait. Spoiler alert. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to be going through this thing page by page. So if you don't want to know what's in this book, stop watching the video now. Yeah, 5 seconds earlier would have been too soon. It was actually when I said the now, that's when you should have stopped. For those of you who are still with us, let's get into the books. And we're back, and this is the more important back because we stuck the important spoiler thing in front of this one, so I'm glad we did, because I don't want any of you guys ever coming back saying, Tennessee Fats, you did not warn me ahead of time. So, you have been warned. And this is also the point in time in the videos where I stick in my obligatory YouTubing. If you enjoy this channel, and if you enjoy people talking about Robert E. Howard, by all means, subscribe to the channel. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you agree or disagree with me, feel free to stick a comment below, especially for those of you who will take the time to actually look up Bart Sears and actually compare them to this, since I put that little bug in your ear. Anyways, let's get the heavy metal magazine that I was reading out of the way. Let's get into the books. So, cover number 1, as you'll notice, and I do want you guys to keep an eye out for this, watch for the art style. It is very unique. Okay, Conan the Barbarian, Lord of the Spiders, issue number 1. Roy Thomas. It's right there. Now, interesting, in all these miniseries, and it happens every time that happened around this point in time, you get a gatefold cover at the front, which gives you a little bit of a backstory. And I think this is really important, and I'm glad they did this. And I believe the reason why they did this is because these miniseries were coming out broken up or fragmented. This adds a bit of continuity, which is good. What I don't like about it, though, is this little write-up over here, where it basically goes along almost to Conan the Adventurer mythos in the cartoon. Really portrays him like a superhero, which is kind of not what he is. Anyways, this one we get an intro for Conan, we get an intro for Harpagus, and you get an intro for Helliana. Helliana is a thief. We've never seen her before, but she is in this story. And Harpagus is introduced to us as the person who survived the burning down of his temple in that whole prequel, which was in those Savage Sword of Conan issues that I mentioned earlier. And here you get a nice little write-up that talks about Roy Thomas's love affair with the Elsbeth de Camp story of Conan the Spider God, and basically gives you the setup as to why we're here now. Now, what's really sort of, what's really sort of adding to the creep factor here, and this is, I don't know if this is an issue of Roy Thomas writing this part or not on these interior of the covers, and you'll notice this as we go to the next couple issues. When they do the whole scenario or the synopsis up here in the front of issues 2 and 3, invariably, and I found this in the other ones, there seems to be some revisionist history. I don't know if the writer of this is the same person who wrote that, because they seem to differ a little bit. And I'll let you guys figure that out when you go and find your own issues and read them. But what's a real creep factor in this is, for some reason, we're referring to Helliana as luscious. You know, that may have been okay in 1998, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's changing sentiments over time. Maybe it's the old man in me coming out, but anyways, the story starts off with Helliana and her friend walking into, basically, the Tower of the Elephant ruins. You remember the Tower of the Elephant from the Tower of the Elephant. And in that, Conan destroyed the whole thing when Yara's temple collapsed, when he actually killed the elephant god. And, well, the elephant being, more correctly, and broke the spell that held it all together. Helliana and her friend are breaking in because they've decided we are going to go in here and we are going to steal some of the jewels. What I really like here is if you look right here, see this panel of the wall? Forget Helliana's ass shot, which is clearly in the photo, but look at the image of the wall, and you see it again here. If you go back and you look at the Barry Windsor Smith art of the original story that was this particular adaptation, that's bang on. 2 points on the art on that one, on really hitting that point home. Anyways, They're in there because they're trying to break through some other stuff. They're trying to get some of the jewels. And nobody in the area will break in and steal the jewels because, well, this is Yara's temple. People have disappeared going in here. So they are stealing the stuff. There's an, what I call it, an illusion? No, not an illusion, an allusion to the fact that apparently they're going to be getting frisky later on tonight. And they're interrupted by this guy who walks in and says, almost, basically, this is Harpagus, who's an amnesiac at this point in time, saying, well, do you know who I am? That sort of thing. And friend of Helliana is basically being somewhat aggressive and says, well, maybe I'll steal your ring because, well, you know, he's a thief. And she's saying, well, leave him alone. Just leave him alone. He's like, no, the ring. And then, here it is. Harpagus suddenly starts to remember, wait, I know who I am. I'm Harpagus. I'm suddenly starting to get a sense of who I am. And he's remembering when the powder was thrown at him by the female lead character. I'm not going to go into details on that one. But in that last story, and how Conan slew the spider god in that story because he was this bronzed killer from the north. And he's remembering who he is and why he would have come here. And he explains, I would have come here because Yara was also a priest of the spider god. So my mind would have come here so that I would start to piece together who I am and why I'm here. Now that, I don't know. When I was reading the whole Tower of the Elephant sort of idea, I don't remember that being in there, but you know what? It's an okay tie-in. I'll take it. And at this point in time, again, Helliana's friend is like, no, I want that ring. And Harpagus, who is now fully blown, no, I'm a priest of the spider god, you back off, turns into a giant spider, as you can see here, and basically kills him and spares Helliana, saying, listen, you told him to spare my life. I'm going to spare yours, but you're going to work for me. I need you to go and find this killer for me and bring him to me, and his name is Conan. And, by the way, Yara, because he was so crazy into the crazy lotus leaf at the time when he was here, would have had a lot of it. We're going to set up a new lotus leaf, basically giant drug consortium here, and you're going to work for me. And that's how I'm going to take over the earth. Within minutes of becoming a not amnesiac, that's some pretty aggressive planning. And honestly, props to this guy for being able to pull that off and go that fast. Once again, late 1990s, we need to have an ass shot of the lead character here, the luscious Helliana. Creepy. Anyways, we cut scene to Conan. Again, remember when I told you to look for the art? Okay, look for the art. Anywho, Conan's getting drunk. He's in a tower, or basically a bar nearby, a city nearby. And he's saying, listen, ladies, you might be ladies of the night. I got no cash. My last money went into the drink. So if you want to enjoy the drink with me, that's fine. Otherwise, piss off. And one of them says, well, I'm out of here. Thanks for the honesty. The other one says, no. I'm all into this. Let's go. And Conan's like, really? Okay, let's go with that. Don't forget, Conan at this point in time, for every Marvel character and story ever written, every story ever written, seems to be the Rico Suave of the Hyborian age. So and by the way, Google Rico Suave. Trust me, it's worth listening to. Anywho, he goes wandering off and follows her because he's like, yeah, of course, I'm going to get lucky tonight. And she leads him into an alleyway where it's obviously a trap and the people are set up and they're going to get him. He says, yeah, come for it. Again, art. Remember I said look for the art. What is that? Why would you? Who? Don't know. Anyways, there's a battle, and he basically finishes these three off pretty quickly and recognizes, again, battle. I'm just going to skip through the battle. Finishes these three off pretty quickly and recognizes that this lady is the one that's actually sent them after him, that set up this trap, and he goes chasing after her, tackles her, and he says, no, listen, I don't kill women. And she's like, listen, you can do whatever you want with me. I don't believe any man because, I had terrible times when I was a youth, blah, 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 blah. Because obviously there's a broken wing story here. And she says, well, I need to take you to my boss. He's like, listen, I admire that, but I'm not going to any boss. And she's like, no, you are. And then she takes off after poking him in the eyes. Conan races after her, sees this board, chases her across the board to find that there's a guy with a crossbow on the one end and a guy behind him. And this was a secondary trap because Helliana figured that he was this tough and set this up as a secondary one. Now, it's interesting, though, she was told to take him alive. Crossbows generally are lethal if you're using them correctly. Also, very slow to reload, as we find out here, because he fires, Conan steps out of the way. How you would step out of the way with crossbow bolts, I have no idea, because clearly he's a ninja now. Shoots the guy that's standing behind him. And by the way, you would never have or set up a kill zone in which two people are firing directly onto one another. You do not have friendly fire when you're setting up a kill box. Didn't make sense. Whatever. We'll just move on past that. Conan has his sword in his mouth now as he's dove off the side of the board. Puts it in. That's a massive sword to hold in your mouth. That thing must have weighed a ton. That would be breaking teeth. Gets back up, and this guy's still reloading his crossbow because guess what I mentioned earlier? Crossbows, slow to reload. And Conan comes running up to him. And if I can get past the advertising page. Oh my goodness, advertising page. basically takes him down, throws him off the side of the building. And when he looks on the ground, because Helliana is now gone, he recognizes, oh, it's a coin from the Tower of the Elephant. Oh, they haven't minted these for a long time, so that must be where you're from. And this wouldn't be carried around as regular currency because that whole city-state has become so financially decrepit that people wouldn't value this. Now, if this is gold, it doesn't matter. It's gold. There is no increasing or decreasing value. You're kind of mixing the idea of the concept of fiat money, which is an economic concept where the value of the coin is hypothetically linked to some bundle of goods versus actual gold. That's a gold coin. Gold is gold. Just going to throw that out there. Anyways, he says, listen, I'm going to follow you back to Yara's city, or to Yara's tower, because clearly that's where you came from, and I'm going to take you down, because a whole lot of people are going to die, because you've now pissed me off. Typical Conan reaction. I like it. Good job. Well done there. I like the reaction. Well done. 2 points for that. Set aside issue number 1. Issue number 2. Kaboom. Again, look for the art. Look for the art. Okay, we pop her open here, and there's our standard gatefold, and we start to get some of the story coming back. And again, where I talk about the revisionist history that exists inside this, I'm not going to go into how it sort of changes. It's very, very subtle, though. Pay attention to it. If you do have this, pay attention to this after you read that. It's a thing. It is a real thing. Anyway, Conan finds himself back in the city where Yara's temple is and gets himself into a bar fight. I'm not even going to go into why or how the bar fight happens, but it does happen. And somebody recognizes him while Conan is in the middle of asking, listen, I'm looking for somebody named Helliana. And they're like, oh yeah, I know her. I haven't seen her in a while since she went over to the Tower of Elephant with Sabo, who she's chummy with. Sabo, who they were going to do some nookie with later. And Conan says, well, listen, give me some meat and some beer. And he says, yeah, no problem. And he says, oh, by the way, who's the local guy now? And like Zath. And Conan spits out his drink. And they're like, what, is there something matter? He's like, no, I killed a god by that name previously. And like, no, this is a man, not a god. Well, somebody did recognize Conan and went off and got city guards, because guess what? Harpagus now goes by Zath and is running the city, because he's killed the magistrate and he's killed the chief priest of Ishtar, I think it was the other person that they mentioned. Anyways, Conan gets himself into a fight with the city guard, and there's a big old battle, and Conan gets himself knocked out and is captured, because obviously he's outnumbered, and obviously because it's convenient for the story that he be captured. And the guy takes off because he says, listen, I got 2 copper pieces. Why? And he's like, well, because you just betrayed the whole Thieves Guild idea here. You just betrayed somebody in the mall. You better get out of here before your friends kill you. And he's like, yeah, good point. I'm gone. Anyways, Conan wakes up. He is with Harpagus. He's in a giant spider's web. And Harpagus has a whole conversation with him now saying how he's Zath. And how really Conan did him a solid, because when Conan burnt down the tower before, Harpagus had just finished figuring out a spell that turned him into a giant spider, which is this whole dialogue down here. It says, the fact that you burnt down the tower, killed the spider god, and killed the chief priest is really convenient for me, because I was going to kill the chief priest myself anyways. So now I'm setting this place up. I'm using all of Yara's lotus that was under the tower the entire time. And basically I've taken over here, and I will then take over the world. But you need to be punished first. And he goes up to threaten Conan and sees no fear in his eyes and jumps down and kills one of his own men, which is kind of weird. I think he did that more so just to show Conan how he could kill somebody than anything else, which is kind of a dick move. But you know what? Yara did the same sort of stuff, apparently, if you listen to, well, at least the Marvel adaptation of that story. So, maybe he's just sort of following the whole thing. Anyways, he decides to go and get a syringe. Now, Hyborian age with a syringe. Not entirely understanding this whole idea where they would have got a syringe, but clearly in the Hyborian age they have the ability to make a glass vial, as well as winnow out a needle so small that it actually makes a syringe, while creating a rubberized barrier to make the syringe work. And they are going to inject Conan with, what did they call it? Distilled? What did they see here? You know, I don't... Lotus liquid, which I guess is supposed to be inferred as distilled, or really just pure lotus liquid. And they inject it in his leg. And Conan basically starts going through the whole process of, well, I'm going nuts. Well, I guess it's first you go through pain, then you go through hallucinations. He's in so much pain, he breaks out of the spiderweb trap. And of course, always be prepared. They had a hole in the floor. They drop him into a pit where Harpagus, now known as Zath, has decided, well, I'm just going to leave you to die here. Typical villain move, by the way. I don't understand. You have the ability to kill somebody. You have the ability to drug them up. You have the ability to capture them. Why don't you just close the door and leave? This is a guy that you literally didn't want killed. You spent all that time on money and taking alive just so you can throw him in a pit after you inject him, and you don't even get to watch him die? Typical Bond villain-esque. Anyways, Conan starts going through, because the pain is past now, starts going through the whole scenario where he's actually hallucinating. There's Kosha, who was the one he killed in the Spider Temple, or sorry, the Tower of the Elephant. But at the same time, now the narrative is changing. Conan is feeling guilt. Conan is feeling bad for what happened. He's like, oh, all these guys are just random soldiers that he killed in his adventures, or he didn't even know their names. And he's like, And then, of course, the greatest piece of guilt is Bellet. And she appears and says, well, no, you left me to die. And he's like, well, hold on. I was suffering under the lotus leaf. I couldn't have come to get you in. She's like, no, that's your fault. You left me to die. And then his final hallucination is her cutting his head off. Pretty horrifying stuff, right? Especially for the woman you love to be now cutting your head off when you already feel enough guilt about the fact that she died to begin with. How he actually ever recovered from that, I don't know. I tell you, I would do an entirely different story on what I think the relationship of Conan and Bellet was in a different video. And if you guys are actually interested in that, let me know in the comments, because I gotta tell you, that's deep, deep stuff. Anyways, he starts to see some light coming in through the top of the tower, and he sees a rope coming in, a dead guard, and Helliana has come to rescue him. And she says, I've come to rescue you because you had the opportunity to kill me and you didn't kill me. So you know what? 2 points for you. Problem being, Conan is as high as a kite. He is tripping balls at this point in time. And he sees her as Zath and says, oh no, I'm going to kill you, Zath. And this is how we end up cutting to the end of this story. Again, gratuitous butt shot. Always need that in the 1990s comics. Because she's luscious, right? Yeah, of course. Anywho, back on to issue number 3. All right, again, gatefold cover. Opening with another butt shot. And revisionist history story at the beginning. Really cool, though. Look at the art. Why does she have a spike through her ear? Like, look, it's right there. That's got to be painful. Wouldn't that, if you're fighting her, wouldn't that be something you would just grab onto and rip out? Anyways, mood point, what do I know? One of the fears I've always had, actually, about getting an ear pierced is actually, if you ever get into a fight, somebody's going to rip that out. And that looks like, especially because, you ever see, what was the movie? Clint Eastwood, Heartbreak Ridge. You ever see Heartbreak Ridge? Yeah. Ooh, don't rip ear piercings out. That's a bad thing. Anyways. He goes to smash her with her rock, and he misses. And she fights back, and he goes, no, I'm going to kill her. And she recognizes, wait, you didn't miss. There's some guy inside you that's not going to kill me because you told me you wouldn't kill a woman. And then, of course, he smashes the rock beside her, and he starts to come out of the haze and explains, no, listen, I'm really tripping balls. She's like, okay, we got to get you out of here because you ain't going to survive here long in this case. Let's go. And he's like, but I'm weakened. Again, gratuitous butt shot, gratuitous butt shot, gratuitous butt shot. And let's just get you somewhere you can recover. So it takes him back to her place, gratuitous butt shot. They talk about it, and she's like, you got to eat. And he's like, I can't eat. And this is where we get a little bit of the backstory of Helliana now, who we've seen none of so far. And we find out that Helliana has had repressed memories the entire time. And Conan's like, listen, you didn't just come back to get me because I didn't kill you. And she's like, no, actually, why I did was because I actually lived in the city where Harpagus was before. They came to get our cattle to slaughter them to the spider god. My parents refused. He killed my parents in front of me. And then basically it's alluded to the fact that even though she was little more than a child, Harpagus basically raped the living crap out of her. And that's why she's like, no, I'm going to kill him myself. And that's what led me down this road of being a thief and living on the streets and what have you. And of course, the bad guys have found them again. How? I don't know. Who cares? Battle ensues. Conan's coming a little bit out of at least the mental effects, but he's still pretty weak at this point in time. And he whips an axe off the wall. He's like, no, I'm going to fight you guys. And says, no, instead of fighting you because I am recognized I'm pretty weak, he drops the net that conveniently was on the roof for some reason in her. Why would you have a net on your roof? I don't know. Conveniently was on the roof in her house on them, and then they escape. And as they're escaping, they go back to the tower. And Helliana's explaining, no, we're here because the only cure to Black Lotus, which is what you're tripping balls on, is White Lotus. I don't know. Anyways, they say, I'm sure there's some here because that's, I saw this crevice when I was here before underneath the Tower of the Elephant. And we just never got there because, Yara was this flaming drug lord at the time. I'm sure he had it. And at this point in time, Conan's like, okay, well, I'm going to help fight and dig and what have you. But the guards arrive, and Conan's just about to do his thing, and he falls through a hole in the floor. Helliana is somewhat caught at bay and is about to be killed, and suddenly Conan comes out of this hole in the floor again, and he's completely fine, because guess what? Magically, he fell on top of a cache of White Lotus. Well, that was convenient. And how instantaneous is the effect of White Lotus that immediately countermands both the physical and mental effects of Black Lotus? And how fast is this guy's adrenaline pumping for his system to literally cycle through that entire thing and basically cleanse it? So many questions. So many questions. Anyways, back to the convenient Conan story. He gets into the bashing, kills everybody, and then they say, let's go kill Harpagus now. Harpagus is now rambling to himself in what is his almost made temple, and he's bragging about how he killed the magistrate with the spider venom, and how he killed the local priest of Ishtar with the spider venom, and how he's going to take over the world, especially, you know, because they're really doing this whole drug trade thing, and it's going really well, because he's obviously the Colombian Drug Lord of the Hyborian Age. And Conan comes walking out of nowhere, because clearly there's no guards, because he just killed them all when they were over in Yarrow's temple, and decides he's going to fight the spider guy, because this is Conan's way of handling it. He's just, head on, I'm going to take this whole thing down. Goes into the fight. There's a battle, and in the battle, unfortunately, some guards do arrive to interfere, and Helliana sort of holds them off. And it looks like it's really going back and forth between Conan and Harpagus as to who's going to survive this. And really, Conan does get the better side of this. Harpagus then turns back into a man and goes wandering off. But at this point in time, a fire has been started. And the fire being started intentionally by Conan and Helliana because they want to actually bring the whole thing to an end. And Helliana dives through the fire to fight Harpagus and tells Conan to leave. This is her thing, and she's going to take care of this, because she's going to make sure he doesn't be able to cast any spells and arise back from this. Dives into the fire and basically sacrifices herself to kill Harpagus and get her final vengeance. Conan then picks up the glass cube that was full of lethal spiders. How he knew he could pick it up without it breaking, I don't know. And throws that into the actual fire as well, so you've cleaned up the whole story. At the end, Conan is outside of the city looking back on it, looking at the smoke, saying, yes, this isn't just the end of Harpagus, but this is also the funeral pyre for Helliana. And that is the end of the story. Well, that is an involved story, I gotta tell you. This was not some sort of weak effort where it was just, hey, we're running around just doing rickshaw, whatever. This was a full enclosed story, and you could definitely tell this had a Roy Thomas-esque type writer on it because it had Roy Thomas on it. Let's get back and actually conclude on what we think of this. All right, let's wrap this one up here. So what did we think of this? Well, I guess there are a couple aspects that I want to take into account here. And one is to do with the art, and the other one has to do with the writing. Now, the comment that you guys will have heard as I was going throughout the books, and you saw this as I was going through them, was I mentioned the word cringeworthy a couple times. I'm going to stop there. I have said it's cringeworthy. That's enough. If you agree with me or disagree with me, feel free to stick a comment below. I'm always willing to listen to your points of view. But to me, at this point in time, 2023, I'm looking back and I'm going, ooh, that didn't stand up well to the test of time. Art style, though, let's start with that. Okay, this art style, and we're talking about the 1990s here, late 1990s, okay? So we're talking about the doldrum years for Marvel, okay? Like, they're really just being punished and just moving along here and just trying to survive. And you've got this sort of Valiant and Image twist happening in the market that happened in the early 90s. That's still carrying forward. The art style is basically still trying to stick with what was, I guess, revolutionary in 1992 and 1993. 5 years later, you're still trying to stick with what really was a broken model, which is unfortunate. And looking back on it now, it's very easy to say, that was unfortunate. But you know what, at the time, we didn't know any better. You're just doing what you're doing. So they were doing their thing. Do I think the art style ruins this story? No, not at all. I actually think the art style is kind of an interesting twist. I made the comment earlier where I said this is very Bart Sears-esque. For anybody who wants to know who Bart Sears is, go and Google him. Take a look at his art. Take a look at some of the revolutionary work that he did in Exo Manowar. I think that was probably where he did some of his best stuff. And you'll go, so that's Bart Sears, eh? And then take a look at this. You're going to notice some very clear comparisons between the two. Very similar style. Now, do I think that style is wrong for the Hyborian Age? No, not at all. The Hyborian Age is a completely made-up age. It can look like whatever the hell you want it to look like is. And if it fits, it fits. The bottom line is the art good? The art was good. And I tell you, the funniest part was that hilt, the sword, right? And then the hilt with a crazy spiky thing on it that I made a comment to, and I was like, what the hell? I tell you, I read the book, I'm like, what is that? What would you do with that? How would you... Listen, maybe it actually existed. I'm not a swordsmith. I have no freaking clue. Maybe it did. Does it look weird to me? Yeah, it looks weird. Is it an interesting twist that I appreciated? Yeah, actually I did. I thought it was kind of neat that we were taking a different direction in the way they do Conan. Now, don't get me wrong. To me, I'm still a Buscema and Ernie Chan Conan guy. To me, that's my Conan. But this I thought was very cool. So, thumbs up on that one, guys. I think that was well done. Writing-wise, now this is the next question. And this is a key point. I really want to hammer this one home because I don't want anybody to be concerned because there's so much what I'm going to call history or baggage to this story. Okay, L. Sprague de Camp wrote a book. I've never read the book. Roy Thomas decided to adapt that book into a 4-part Savage Sword of Conan story in 1993. Have I read that? No, I haven't. I already told you I haven't. I got the first and the last issue, but I don't know the middle one, so I haven't read it. No idea. picking this one up, was I at a disadvantage to read this 3-part story? No, not at all. Not at all. They did a great job right at the beginning of the story saying, who's Harpagus? Okay, what's his modus operandi and what is he doing? Why does he exist? And what's his real reason for being? And then, why does Conan hate Harpagus? Why do these two not get along? Why is there some sort of mutual antagonism? Trust me, that is an important point. Without that, you would really be reading the story going, we're just fumbling from one scenario to the next. You're not. You're following a defined story. And it's a defined story that's set at 0 in issue number 1. You really can start here from scratch and read the 3 issues. You don't need all the background point. That's all negative points. Just leave it alone. Is it going to impact and make this a better or worse read if you did read it? I couldn't tell you. I'm going to have to shoot a subsequent video where I actually find the Outbreak to Camp book, read it, find the other 2 issues of this, read the whole thing, and then I'll be able to say, yeah, it helped, or no, it didn't make any difference. Because to me, based on just reading these, I think this is a self-contained story enough that you can enjoy it as it is. Roy Thomas really did a good job on this one. He hit it out of the park. So, Roy, well done, okay? Well done. So, should you buy this? Absolutely. If you're a Cananophile, and even if you're not a Cananophile, and you just like random sword and sorcery stories, then you absolutely should go out and find these 3 issues and you should read them. I would encourage you not to buy them and stick them in bags and boards and put them away and forget about them. Actually read them. I think these were really well done. I think it's an interesting story for Conan. I think it's an interesting sword and sorcery story in general. I think it's an interesting fantasy-esque story, and I think you would really enjoy this if you like any of those particular aspects of those genres. This will work well for you. I encourage you to do so. This book to me, or this mini-series to me, seems like a slam dunk. I'm like, yeah, you should absolutely buy this. This was well done. There you go. You know, it's a lot of fun at the end of these ones for me to tear something apart and say, this is terrible and here's why. And I'm sure it's very popular and whatever, but it doesn't fit here. This one was well done. So everybody, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you will take my advice to go out and find this one. And then if you do read it, post a comment. Let me know what you think. And I will see you in the next video. Everybody, have yourself a great day.